Dragon Pokemon are labelled as the best Pokemon in the series, both in the video games as well as in the TCG. Anytime a new Dragon Pokemon card is revealed, 9 times out of 10, it's incredibly powerful and will immediately see competitive play. However, this isn't always the case. Sometimes the card just doesn't really do enough, or its energy requirements might be a bit awkward. But these issues can easily be fixed with other engines and support. In our current meta, the Lost Zone engine has access to Mirage Gate, which can attach 2 different energy types directly from the deck. However, sometimes the biggest issue with the card is the attack itself. Regidrago Vstar, released back in Silver Tempest, has a very unique attack that on paper sounds very strong. For the cost of 2 grass and 1 fire energy, its attack lets you copy the attack of another Dragon Pokemon in your discard. This sounds very strong, especially considering the different Dragon Pokemon we had in the format at that time. Duraludon VMAX, Hisuian Guja V-Star, Dragonite also released in Silver Tempest, and of course, Giratina V-Star. Plus, Pokemon that copy attacks of other Pokemon have been prevalent in the game many times before this. However, even with support from other engines and cards like Lost Box or RCSV, the card and deck saw almost no play at all except as a rogue strategy. Why? Well, because there really wasn't a point in playing it. Why play Regidrago with all these stage 1 and 2 Pokemon that are bricks and only useful when in the discard, when you can just play Tina Lost Box, or Guja Lost Box, or Duraludon Arceus, compared to other attack copiers such as Mewtwo and Mew GX, which basically acted as another copy of any GX Pokemon, and another being Mew VMAX, which could copy attacks for low energy cost, and those Pokemon you copied the attacks of were actually useful. Even as new sets were released and more Dragon Pokemon came out like Noivern EX and even Raging Bolt EX, the deck was still just obsolete from the format. However, with the release of Twilight Masquerade, Regidrago would suddenly out of nowhere make its way into being one of the best decks of the format. So what exactly was released that could turn this card from useless to incredible so quickly? But before we get into the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as your support really does help out this channel. This is all thanks to 2 cards. A new Dragon Pokemon, Dragapult EX, which has a very powerful attack that is able to spread damage counters onto multiple Pokemon on the bench, as well as the deck's new way of accelerating energy into play, that being Teal Mask Ogerpon, letting you attach a grass energy from the hand to itself and then draw a card. With this, the deck quickly rose through the ranks and took the format by surprise. Not only did the deck get another really good dragon target, but an incredible energy accelerator that was also a counter to the best deck in the format, Charizard. The deck is fast and aggressive, not to mention Regidrago's V-Star power is also pretty good, letting you discard the top 7 cards of your deck, which can help get Dragon Pokemon into the discard, but then you get to add up to 2 cards from your discard to your hand. Any cards, even if they were previously in the discard before you used this effect. So while you could mill a dragon to copy its attack, you could also mill a supporter or an item card and just grab them back. The only real issue this deck suffers from is just how fast paced it can be, to the point that you might mill yourself out. The deck wants to draw and discard a lot. You want to see as many cards as possible and discard as many cards as possible to make sure you have a Dragon Pokemon in the discard ready for Regidrago. Even then, the deck is still very strong and got 3 top 64 slots at the NAIC, which was the first big event of Twilight Masquerade being legal. This deck's future is also looking very, very good. Shrouded Fable has given the deck even more Dragon Pokemon to play around with, 2 in fact, both of which are incredibly powerful and will most likely make the deck a much bigger threat. These 2 cards being Kyurem as well as Haxorus. Haxorus is the weaker out of the 2, but still pretty strong. It has 2 attacks, but the first is the most important, saying that if your opponent's active Pokemon has any special energy attached, it's knocked out. Lugia is still a thing, so this card just makes that matchup completely free. Plus, any deck that's playing the special energy cards such as Neo Upper Energy and Legacy Energy will need to be very careful when faced against this deck. Mist Energy used to be a common inclusion for some decks like Charizard because of Dragapult and Lost Box, but has since dropped in popularity. So if that card sees a resurgence, or if Lugia or another special energy reliant deck starts popping up in the format, then Regidrago will have more reason to include Haxorus in the deck. As of now, the card isn't seeing a huge amount of play, but some deck lists have been including it. And then there is Kyurem. Its attack says that you can discard all energy from itself and deal 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack is extremely powerful and can very easily KO 3 Pokemon at the same time, especially if you're playing against an evolution deck. You do have to discard all energy from Regidrago, but that doesn't matter in the slightest because this deck can easily get multiple Regidrago Vstars powered up very quickly. So if your opponent has a bench full of low HP Pokemon, you can just win in 2 attacks. However, there is still the existence of Manaphy, a very popular bench protection Pokemon that will probably become a necessity for multiple decks. But this card shouldn't deter you from wanting to play Kyurem, because if they don't bench Manaphy, then this card can just very quickly win the game out of nowhere. Plus you could sneak in a copy or 2 of Cancelling Cologne and then gust up Manaphy so its ability is turned off. Plus this card is also just a counter to Lost Box because it has an ability that says if your opponent has a card with Colress in its name in the discard, you can just use Kyurem's attack for 1 energy. So instead of copying the attack with Regidrago and discarding all your energy, you can instead bench Kyurem, attach an energy, and hit 3 Pokemon for 110 damage. This card isn't just good in Regidrago, but good in pretty much any deck. Lost Box is still very popular after all, but this card fits more into this deck as you can make use of its attack more easily instead of hoping that you're up against Lost Box, which for any other deck will make this card a brick if you're not. Regidrago quickly went from being a rogue deck that no one talked about to being one of the best decks in the format. And all it took was a couple of very powerful dragons and a very powerful energy accelerator. The deck has managed to gain some time in the spotlight even if it's close to the end of its legality. Being part of the F-Block series of cards means that this card will be leaving the format at some point next year. Even then this card still has time to leave its impact as we head into the next competitive season of Pokemon. Plus we are still not done with the product lineup for this year. There is always the possibility of new Dragon Pokemon being released that this deck can make use of. After all, we have had news of a dedicated Dragon set releasing in Japan later this year in September. So new tools are on the horizon for this deck, depending on when we see those cards for ourselves over in the West. A sneak peek of the set has already shown us a Dragon-type Alolan Executor, which has an attack that can insta-KO your opponent's Pokemon. Granted, it only works on basic Pokemon, and it's a coin flip to the side if you KO the active or a benched Pokemon. Regidrago had a very rough start to its lifespan. It just wasn't worth playing when the dragons it used were better off being played on their own. But even as its legality comes to an end, it has proven itself to be just as powerful as the other dragons before it.